Hello everybody, my name is Zara and today I'm going to be talking about the 2024 PWHL draft and what I think might happen in the first round. Now, the research that I had to do for this video was a lot. It was a lot. It was several hours that I had to spend. I had the prospect list of 167 players, that's forwards, defenders, and goalies, that are eligible to be drafted. And I had to go through and one by one look up their stats from mostly last year, a little bit of comparing it to years past. Maybe this was just a really good year for them. And, usually they're pretty, even. But, yeah, I went through and I wrote down my best statistic. Now, this is going to be my opinion. Obviously, the drafts haven't happened yet. And I tried to kind of figure out who I think might go first, who might be picked up pretty early on. Based on just how they play the game. Before I start, let me talk a little bit about the criteria. What did I base these picks off of? Because I think that's really important to point out. What was I looking at that made me make these decisions, right? Primarily, I sorted out my list of forwards and defenders based on points per game. Point, in case you don't know, you get 1 point if you get a goal, and 1 point if you assisted in a goal. There are a lot of defenders that have really good points per game because, not necessarily because they made the goal, but they were the last person to touch the puck before the goal scorer got that goal. And quite frankly, defenders can make goals too, right? I mean, they're all of these people on the ice are hockey players and have at some point gotten a goal. That's what got them into playing hockey professionally, is at some point they were good at all of these different positions. But points per game, obviously you can't win a game unless you're getting goals, and so especially as a forward, it's really important that you're getting points per game. That you have a pretty good points per game percentage. For me, a good points per game percentage is 1 or above, at least looking at this. If you have that, you have a really good, really strong effect on the success of your team. If you're getting at least, if you're in some way a part of at least 1 goal per game. The second criteria I used was how many games did they play in last season. And because quite frankly, you can have a really good points per game. If you get if you get 2 goals in a game, that's really, really good for that 1 game. Right, but that doesn't mean that you get 2 every single game. And so the number 1 points per game out of all of the forwards, the number 1 was Laura Klung. I'm going to be mispronouncing a lot of these names, so I'm so sorry. But she got 1.8 points per game. That's really good, right? But she only played in 10 games last season, which, number 1, that's very little, and I'm wondering why she wasn't put out more. There is a reason. There's definitely has to be a reason. But number 2, it just, statistically, it kind of throws it off, right? Again, as I said, if you get 2 goals and you only play in 1 game, but 2 goals in that 1 game, then you get a 2 points per game percentage. But that doesn't tell me anything. That doesn't tell me if you're consistently getting those goals. And so That's what I'm kind of looking for, is consistency. Consistency. Can you consistently get lots and lots of goals, or at least lots and lots of points, right? And so the people that I picked for the first round were people that were getting really good points per game in a lot of games. Like, my cutoff was, I believe, 25 games. If you played in 25 games, then I would consider you your points per game to be relatively glowing of how you actually play, right? I know that's cutting off a lot of people, but I have to make cuts somewhere. For me, statistically, it's just important that I have a good sample size. The next metric I used was, how old is this person? And / do they play for university or professionally? To sort of just a con to having played in university is that obviously it's not as hard of a league. It's still hard. I mean, playing in U sports or collegiate sports or NCAA, that is difficult. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I'm just saying it's not the same as, like, you went to the Olympics. Like, some of these women are, like, Olympians, or they played in Team Canada, Team USA, especially players that are already in the PWHL. So, that kind of makes that different. But a pro to it is you're still young, you can still grow to be even better than you are. And so, just because you don't have, like, as good of a goal of points per game percentage now, doesn't mean you can't get better. And so that does make a difference. And that's the kind of calculation that you have to make when you are doing these draft picks. Is it possible for this person to get better? Is it possible for them to get worse? Yes, but it is possible for them to get even better. And if they're already pretty good now at 23, they're going to get better by 25. If they got better by 25, then that's golden. One of the last metrics I used was, when did they last play, right? And one of these women that was on my list of 15 last played in 2017, and unfortunately, that feels like a lifetime ago. If you haven't played professionally or in a way that I can track since before the 2020 COVID pandemic, I don't know what that says. I don't know why you haven't been playing. I don't know how good you are now. I just don't know. And so anyone that hasn't played, really, I mean, the list I'm about to give are all people that played last year or, this year, 2023, 2024. If you aren't playing consistently and regularly, I just don't know how you are on the ice. Maybe you've gotten better, or maybe you've fallen off completely. I just don't know. And so, yeah, again, as I'm saying, like, I did most of this legwork before I looked at any of the lists. I did look up how the NHL drafts have usually gone when people are, like, speculating, or how people are speculating for this year's PWHL drafts. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I might be wrong, but I try to sort of, figure out the best strategy, right? New York gets to pick first out of anybody. And I looked at their defense. I didn't see anything necessarily wrong with their defense. I also don't necessarily think that their goalie is that bad. They just needed more goals, right? And so using the points per game metric, you can kind of see players that are, like, even if they don't necessarily get the goals, they're part of the main core of whatever teams they've played for in getting the goals that were necessary, right? And I also wanted someone who's about to enter into a prime, as far as hockey is concerned, maybe not that old. I'm not leaving out the 28-year-olds or the 25-year-olds in my list. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But I'm just saying, you probably want like a really strong, young athlete that is really good at getting goals made either by themselves or as assists, right? And the person I thought was best for that was Izzy Daniel, who played for Cornell University, and her points per game, she got 1.74 points per game. Out of my entire list of 167 players, some of which are goalies, but she was number 3 in like having really good points per game, right? And she was the first one that was university aged, and so I kind of figured that it was a really good start, a really good first pick. I don't think anyone would be upset with having Izzy Daniel on their team. If she isn't picked up by New York, she's going to be picked up by somebody in the first round. I don't want to make it guaranteed, but I'm just saying, like, I can't imagine, like, skipping on her for more than a round. Like, you're going to want to scoop her up, right? Next came Ottawa, right? And I looked at whether or not their defense was bad, and they don't have really good defenders. There are, like, some really good ones, but, like, you want at least 2 lines that have, like, good defenders, good at, like, getting points and good at, like, cross-checking, and quite frankly, a belt. I mean, I kind of feel like as a defender, it's really good to be built like a defender. And so I looked at the list, right, and I saw that one of the defenders that maybe didn't have the best points per game, but had a really good points per game, was Mariah Hines, who had a points per game of .73, and so she is a part of a lot of goals that were achieved by Isulu Alamati. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but a really good, and quite frankly, she's tall. She's about 5'10", 176 pounds. So she can really cross-check. She is 25 years old, which is right around the peak of her career. So if whoever picked her up is going to get a young player who's built really good for cross-checking and for doing all of these things that you're going to want your defender to do, right? And again, she's good at being a part of plays that get goals, right? And so I think Ottawa is going to want a defender in pretty early on. Maybe they'll go for another forward. Maybe they think that that's the issue that they need to focus on the most. And listen, giving a defender the second pick of the draft is pretty ballsy, but I'm just saying, if I was picking for all of the teams, I would want Ottawa to have a really good defender, and I think that's what they would have with Mariah Hines, but that's just me. Next is my favorite team, Minnesota, and again, I don't think they had a bad forward. I mean, quite frankly, they had a really strong team. It's just that all of these teams were really strong. And so I wanted to give them, again, a young forward who has a lot of goals per game and, you know, can just get that job done. And so I picked Danielle Serdachny. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that. There's a lot of names in here that are kind of unfamiliar to me. But she played at Colgate University in the NCAA and 1.53 points per game. Again, that's a point and a half per game. She's a part of a lot of plays that are really important and like get that job done. And I think that she would be a really good addition to any team. Boston is the 4th pick, and I was looking at the list because I was a little bit confused because I was looking at the list that other outlets have put out for who they think is the best, like, number 1 forward, and they put Sarah Fillier, who does not have that many points per game. I agree, and the reason I'm putting her so high above other forwards who get more points per game is because in the last season, because again, as I said, this is all based off of the last season, the numbers I'm listing, is because she is consistently and has been consistently for years getting a lot of goals per game or a lot of points per game, like quite a lot and consistently. And so if she is picked up in the 1st pick or 2nd pick or the 3rd pick, listen, I'm just saying, like, I get it, I understand that, but because of last season and the fact that she didn't quite get as many points per game as so many other players, I wouldn't pick her first out of anybody for one of the teams, the 3 teams ahead of her. But if she is picked ahead of the 4th pick, that's fine. It's a strong pick. For the 4th pick, there's Montreal. Again, the defenders are fine. I don't think you pick a defender in the 1st round unless you kind of need to work on your defense. And so I just figured we'll just go for another forward. And I pick Teresa Knudsen. Knudsen. I don't know. She had a points per game of 1.75. She played for HCAP, which I'm not going to try to butcher the actual thing that stands for, but yeah. And finally, Toronto gets to pick last in the 1st round. And if I was running Toronto, and by that point, all of the other players that I've already listed were gone, I would go with Nura Tullis, who had a points per game of 1.69. She's a Finnish player. She's the first player out of this list that is not from the U.S. or Canada. And she played for Luleå Hockey, which is an SDHL league team. And, you know, she's just, again, a very strong forward. She'd get a lot of points per game. And, again, she's only 28, right? Which 20 is not that old, right? There was a Chara, which I don't know what team he played for, but he was like the oldest, was the oldest before he retired. NHL player that was still playing, and he was like really, really tall. He's a defender. And so, and he was 45, was my point. He was 45 years old. So you can play, you know, well into your 30s. I'm just saying, if you're getting drafted, generally it's younger. Generally, you're not drafting 40-year-olds or 30-year-olds. I'm very interested and very excited to see if, again, Izzy, Daniel, Mariah Hines, Danielle Serdachny, Sarah Filer, Teresa Knutson, and Nura Tullis. If any or all of those are picked in the first round, I'm going to be pretty excited. Obviously, again, this is based off of my opinion. Your opinion might be different, and quite frankly, the people that are picking are going to have a different perspective than any of us, and a lot more research is going to be done by them. Again, this is several hours of research, and I'm looking right now at just how many women there are, and again, such great players, right? I mean, I'm looking at some of these, and a couple of them have very low points per game, but that's pretty understandable. Anyways, after all of that, my throat is very dry. Let me know down below what you have to say, if you think that there's anything that I'm missing, what your favorite team is, and who you hope your team is able to pick up in the first round. There's only 6 teams, so no matter what, your first round pick is gonna be good. I mean, they're gonna be a good player, right? It's not like the NHL where this, like, by the time you get to 32, maybe it's kind of slim pickings for, like, elite players, right? With 6, you have a really good chance of getting a really good player no matter what position they're playing. Happy Pride, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.